So I'm live with, I've forgotten the name of my guest, Lynn K. Russell. Is that right? Did I get your name right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I had your name and I forgot it. But you're a Unitarian Universalist and you're also something of an expert on near-death experiences. Do you want to just introduce yourself to my listeners and talk a little bit about what you're excited about?
Um, I'm Lynn K. Russell. I'm a writer. I had the opportunity to research 2,500 near death experiences. And what I was mostly interested in was the learning behind the experiences. I didn't, after a few hundred, I wasn't interested in what happened because I could figure that out. But I was more interested in knowing where to from there. And that was the deeper messages was what I was wanting to know about.
Okay, you're talking about ultimate reality, the spirit world, afterlife, and this sort of thing. Is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
yes, yes.
And what did you learn? What have you been learning? Have you been streamlining what you've learned into a teaching or a book or
Well,
what?
I've written. I wrote a book back in. I think it was published in 2014, and it was called. Oh, it is called "The Wonder of You: What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself." And because it did it was so well received and everybody just loved it. It's out now in the second edition, and I've added quite a bit to the new one. So it's just been released on the 1st of February this year. So
Oh,
it's new.
okay. Can people find that online, like on Amazon
Yeah,
or something like that?
yeah, yeah. Anywhere that there's Amazon, it will be. It's
And
also in it's also in stores.
okay. And can you tell me and my listeners a little bit about yourself, a bit of biographical background, how you were raised, and what sort of belief systems you might have
Sure.
gone
Yeah.
through growing up, and then as an adult, and
Okay.
how old you are today, and what you did for a living, and all that sort of
Oh,
thing.
okay. Okay. Um, I'm 81, and so my voice is a little cracky.
That's
But
okay.
anyway, um, I was raised by an atheist. My mother didn't believe in anything, and so I didn't really get any spiritual training at all in our home. But I was very curious because my grandfather had died, and I was about 8 or 9 around there. And so when he died, I realized that everybody dies. I mean, we never talked about this stuff at home, but I realized that I was going to die. And that was terrible. I didn't want to die. And so I was quite frightened by the thought of dying. And so I went to my mother and I asked her, well, what happens when you die? And she said, nothing, you just disappear.
Mm.
That wasn't such a good idea to tell a child that.
Mm.
That terrified me. I thought, oh no, I don't want to disappear. So I became very interested in all kinds of religions from that. Well, I think from then, but I really started in my teens to research religions in earnest. And I read just about every kind of religion there was in the world, and the offshoots as well. And so, and I also took catechism, by the way. That just
Ah.
is an added little piece there,
Ah.
because I married a Catholic.
Mm.
But after the marriage was not a good marriage, and so I divorced.
Mm.
And after the marriage, I went back to school and eventually became a family counselor.
Mm.
And I had 3 kids, so I was a single parent mom with 3 kids. 2 of them are hyperactive.
Mm.
It was quite the story.
Mm.
But then I worked as a family counselor for about 30 years. and absolutely loved my job. I loved what I was doing. And then when I retired, which was almost 15 years ago, I I wanted to write a book that was. I knew I wanted to be a writer. That was given. But I wanted to write a book, and so I had to do research for my book because in my book, the woman that was in my book was astral projecting or out of body experiences, and so I wanted to find out, could my character in my book actually do what I had given her to do. So I was researching that, and I came across NDERF, which is Near Death Experience Research Foundation. And they had a segment on OBEs, out of body experiences. And so I went there and I did some research, but I also got hooked into all those cool near death experiences. And so I stayed around and just chatted with people for a bit every day. And Dr. Long, Dr. Jeffrey Long, asked if anybody would be willing to volunteer to do research, and I said, "Yeah, it sounds like a cool thing." I was retired now, so why not? So I that's when I did my 2,500 near death experiences, and and in the beginning, as I say, I was more interested in. I was fascinated by what had happened to people, what experiences they had. But then later, I became much more interested in um, the deeper lessons that were coming back from death experiences.
Mhm. So, you said you studied a lot of religions, you went through a lot of exploration. Did you settle on UU almost immediately after that, or just describe the journey into Unitarian Universalism, if you would?
Yeah, I sorry, just a sec. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
My I became a Unitarian, or at least, yeah, I guess I became a Unitarian when I was about 18, so not too far after. But I continued to study because Unitarians don't have a dogma, and of their principles, they have 7 principles that they live by, and the two they can be boiled down to 2 main points. The one is respect for all life, no matter what, and the other one is search for truth, whatever that might be. So there isn't one direction with the Unitarians, which was perfect for me. So that's when I stuck around. But as I say, I kept studying, and even in later years, and even now, I still continue to study. I can't stop. I just love hearing about more thought, different thinkings and different ways of seeing things. That's great.
I want to ask you a little bit about near-death experiences and what you've learned and how it conflicts or contrasts with Roman Catholicism, because you mentioned in an email that it's not really compatible. Do you want to go into depth on what sort of conflict or mutual exclusivity there is between what you've learned and the doctrines of the Catholic Church, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things that I learned that I was surprised at was that we don't necessarily have a death experience that echoes what we have been taught or what we followed here in the physical life. That was surprising because I assumed all Christians saw Christians, and that primarily is true, but it's not just true, not the only truth. So that was one thing. The other thing I learned was that the one thing that excited me most was that we gain all complete knowledge. We know everything that there is to know, and that was fascinating for me because I love learning, and I just couldn't get enough. And when I found out that, like, when I die, find out everything. So that was cool.
Mm. Is there any difference between the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for any human?
Yeah. One of the other things, the big important points are that that we create our own death experiences. Each one of us has an active role in creating the experience that we have. And so, here's my voice again, just a sec. So we create our own experiences. Oh no, no, no. Oh,
It's okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Can I get this?
Sure, go for it. You want to mute? I'll mute you so we don't hear it. So, okay. So my guest is actually on the phone right now, and I'm going to continue asking her questions. I've muted her because she's actually speaking to a friend who's ill. So I don't want to air that. I hope it's muting properly. But she said it wouldn't be long, so just... She said, if I've understood her properly, I think she said she's back now, so here we go. She's just ending the call.
Thank you. Sorry
Not a problem.
about that.
Not a problem.
And one of the other things that, aside from creating our own experiences, there is no judgment. And that's one of the big things that's quite different from what religions teach. And I would say all religions, pretty much.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we get out of it, that we don't have to take responsibility and the consequences of our actions. We do. How it works is that we have what we call a life review, and during the life review, we experience exactly what we have done to others, whether that is good or bad, both directions. And so our souls actually become the other person and actually feel in real life what it was like for that person. So if we did something kind and caring, then that's what they would feel. And if we did things that were difficult or hard for the other person, that's what we would feel. But then it doesn't stop there. It goes on to those persons, the people that those people had, the people we were relating to, the people they had contact with. So that works very much, and that's good. And so that's how we feel. That's how we live or experience the consequences of our actions, and feel, the responsibility. And there isn't any chance of saying things like, well, he did such and such first. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So just paint a little picture hypothetically of the very best case scenario versus the very worst case scenario. So let's say there's someone that was only good, only kind, only patient, only virtuous, only loving. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's someone that was the opposite. They lacked every virtue, and they lacked humility, they lacked love.
Sure.
And what is the ultimate outcome? Meaning, after they've reviewed everything, after they've lived everything that they've inflicted on others, and after they've lived everything that those people that they inflicted on others, and so on and so forth, down through that hierarchy of that web of interconnectedness of interpersonal relationships. After all of that, when all is said and done, what is the outcome for the best case scenario person and the worst case scenario person, please?
All right, I'll try and see if I can remember all of that. The best case scenario is that the soul feels great joy, just overwhelmed with thrill, like just more happy than we can ever imagine here, because we just don't know that level of happiness. but they are so thrilled that they were able to help somebody. And you know that there isn't a level of helping. They feel the same thrill if they picked up a package for somebody that had dropped it. That the same level of joy in the soul as there would be if they took a person in and fed them, or saved someone. There's no difference. Kindness is kindness is kindness, and so that the other thing that needs, and with the worst case scenario, there's a lot of shame and a lot of anger with oneself, and why did I do that, and how could I, and that kind of thing. And to be honest, while the life review is happening, the person is feeling great, a great deal of love is still coming to them. They don't stop feeling this overwhelming amount of love that just pours to them. Whether they're, it doesn't matter where they are or what they're doing. They still feel this great joy. Or the sadness, whichever. But the love is the same, always the same. Now, the people who have done things they wish they hadn't will sometimes become very angry or disappointed with themselves, and then their guides, which, by the way, are there with them, will tell them that it's okay, it's just learning experiences. And it also depends on our intentions. Even if it came out wrong, what was in our heart when we started to do whatever we were going to do? That is more important than than whether it came out bad or not. So that's important. And some people who feel that they are not worthy will stop themselves from being able to go all the way to wherever they're going to wind up, like a heaven kind of experience. They will make themselves stop, and they stay in the halfway point. But they do it to themselves. That's important to know. And so they get to this halfway point, and they stop because they don't think they're worthy to continue on. And that's very sad, because that's their home. That's the soul's home. And so the soul has stopped itself because of what it's learned. So it somehow has to learn that it's okay, it can go on. Some people, some people create hell for themselves, and I say it deliberately that way because, as I said, we take an active role in the experience that we have, and hell is just part of that active role that we create because we are great creators. We are amazing creators, and that is one of the big things that I learned in the deeper sense of spirituality, was how much we take a role in creating. Because, well, if you think about it from just a logical sense of, if we were created by a source or by a god or by whatever name we want to call it, when we're created by this being, before creation there was nothing but the being, nothing. And so creation happens instantly because, that would be very, very, very painful to be. But what does God use to create with? Well, God uses itself, its own energy. And I'm sorry, I apologize to anybody who doesn't like me saying it, but I have to, because that feels most comfortable for me. So we really do create. We're creating right this very second, and we create everything that we experience. And sometimes that's blatant; we can see it, and sometimes we just don't get it. And I certainly didn't for a long time, that's for sure. And so those are really important lessons. Another thing that happens with people when they get to the other side is they feel so overwhelming that everything is them and they are everything, that it's all connected and that there's only one huge being. So, what did God use to create with? God had to have used its own love energy. And so that means we are love power, we are love energy. And it is that we create with.
And how many persons are there in what is ostensibly the human race? Is separation an illusion? Is there only the one being, or are you and I two separate beings really and truly and actually for all eternity? You and I will be two separate beings, and there are billions of us human beings. Do you understand my question? The question is the one and the many. Is there only the one? Is that the only reality? Or is there individual, are you and I different, separate individuals for all eternity?
We are one. And there is nothing but one. That's all there is one.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like some of the Eastern religions, Buddhism and certain forms of certain understandings of Hinduism and this sort of thing. There is only the one. So there is no possibility of being trapped in hell forever. Ultimately, everyone's going to be reabsorbed into the one reality of, I guess, for lack of a better term, God, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And people who put themselves into a hellish kind of experience, when all the ones that I studied got out when they felt that they couldn't, like they would call out for help and they would be taken out. Or one man was an atheist and had been an atheist most of his life, but he remembered he found himself in hell, and so he remembered the song "Jesus Loves Me," and so he started singing that, and he was pulled out of hell. So sometimes our guides come and help us to get out of that mess that we're into. Another thing that you might be interested in is that people do see the a being that is like Jesus or Buddha, or some kind of that represents their idea, the perfect being. But the role that Jesus would play, for example, in their experience is exactly the same as the guide. So I think it's just their guides, but we create that it looks like our deity.
Yeah, I mean, from my Catholic perspective, just to be perfectly blunt and honest with you, I see the guides as demons that are fooling people in this life because they haven't passed on to the afterlife yet. They're still alive. I think they're demons that are fooling people into thinking that it doesn't matter what you do because ultimately everything is one and separation is illusion, and ultimately it's only the one reality of God and heaven that awaits everyone. It doesn't matter what you do. So that's my Catholic perspective. That's the danger of the Eastern religions and the danger of monism and the danger of your point of view is that it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do. You're going to end up in heaven because that's the only reality, right?
Yes, that is the only reality. You're right.
So you can understand why, from my Catholic perspective, that's an evil teaching, because we will not strive for heaven if we think that heaven is guaranteed. At least I wouldn't. If I thought heaven were guaranteed, I would relax all of my morals, all of my, right now I'm striving to control my appetites, but I'm going to give that project up if I'm guaranteed to go to heaven, right?
Interesting. No, I wouldn't see it that way. I think people who are atheists can be very moral.
Yeah, I agree. But I agree that everyone can be moral, but there are certain things we need to do if we want to go to heaven. And from the Judeo-Christian point of view, there are things that we need to do. We need to, like Jesus said in the Bible, if you love me, keep my commandments. So there are obligations that we have to. If we're monotheists, we have to strive to be virtuous. And if you tell me, if I came to believe, and it's not going to happen, but if I came to believe that it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to end up in heaven because separation is illusion and the only reality is God in heaven, then I'm going to relax all of my efforts, which are, laughable efforts to date because I've only been Christian for 10 years, but I'm going to relax all of my efforts to control my appetites, and I'm going to indulge in my appetites because it feels better, it's easier. See what I mean?
Yes. And I don't know what to say, because that's your belief, and I don't interfere in other people's thoughts and beliefs. I respect that. That's where you come from, and so there you go.
But how do you understand virtue and vice? How do you understand that? How do you fit that into your worldview? When ultimately it doesn't matter if you're vicious or if you're virtuous, you're going to get the same outcome because.
Well, for me, it means first of all, I think we're trained, at least in my life, I was trained to be virtuous and caring and kind as much as possible. But the other thing is that I think knowing that I am a part of the source really matters to me, and that in order for me to be all that I can be and to get back to the source, I must be kind. I must be good. I must help others in whatever way I can.
Okay, so there's a possibility of not getting back to the source, to being permanently stuck in hell.
I know that it will. Logically, my brain says it's going to happen. Emotionally, my brain says, well, you better look after it,
Okay, so what about, I want to ask you about theater and drama and sort of going through the motions, pretending, okay, this is the game. Life is a game and we're players on a stage and it's theater, and you're going to play the role of mother, grandmother, sister, whatever, daughter. You have different roles to play, family counselor, you're a member of this religious group or whatever.
You mean reincarnation?
No, I'm talking about you right now in this life. You're playing a role. You and I are playing roles. And we have a lot of drama that goes with that, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the emotions and all this sort of thing. And the drama in and of itself is the point. It doesn't matter that ultimately we're all destined for heaven and the unity of the Godhead. What really matters is experiencing the diversity and the drama of this world, the theater of it. What do you think of that idea?
I'm partly right and partly not. I think partly I can see it because there is only one being, and we are a part of it. Then it really doesn't matter because we're really just the beings experiencing this existence, and so. We can experience this existence, or we can experience a different existence. It doesn't matter, It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant whether there's different roles that people play. It's irrelevant. It's all just being, which is back to what you're asking. Yeah, I mean, I do definitely feel, but I take it a step farther that there's a reason for the being and not just because we're playing a role. I think there's the reason, I believe, is that we give back to the source in our experience. So every experience that we have, what we are doing, we are giving back to the source. And so by giving back to the source, we that's the significance of our being. Not the roles, just being. Yeah.
I want to ask you a two-part question. There's sort of two different ends of the spectrum on the emotional spectrum. So on one end you have humor and jokes and levity and laughter. On the other end you have tragedy and tears and stuff like that. So if you flip through the newspaper, I don't know if they have paper newspapers anymore, but back in the day you used to have the paper newspaper, and you could read the the tragedies that happened. So many people died or were murdered or raped or whatever on the first couple of pages, and then you have near the back you have like sports and comics, and you can have a laugh. Okay, so my question basically is anything funny? Is anything really funny? And or is it just the illusion? Is it just some sort of trick that we're falling into when we find ourselves laughing at some cartoon or some comic or whatever it is? And the other part of that question is anything really sad or tragic, like when we see someone axe murdered their grandmother, is that really tragic? Is it really sad? So can you just talk about those two ends of the spectrum and the reality of joy and sorrow?
Sure. I'm sorry. I've blanked out.
Joy and sorrow.
Okay.
Is anything funny? Is anything really funny? Like when you find
Yeah.
yourself laughing at a joke?
Yeah. There was a fellow, actually, yes. I mean, I'm old, I just said, I'm 81. And I often laugh at myself. I'll be doing something that's silly. I don't mean silly. It can be a normal, ordinary thing. And like, for example, fretting about something. And and I'll start laughing at myself. Oh, you silly. You know, that way.
Yeah.
So in that way, I see life as being, you know, oh, we create this silliness for ourselves, or we fret or we worry about things that are irrelevant. They really don't matter. They're, you know, it doesn't matter tomorrow or the next day or, you know, that kind of thing. So that's, but I also have one man that I researched that he spent his time inside the light. When he was at the other side, there's this humongous light, and he entered into the light. And while he was in the light, he joked around with the source, and had a great old time together. You know, so there's certainly humor in that way too. I think the things that bring joy are that we are children. We really, really, really are. We're so naive and so we don't understand. And it's sort of like watching a child struggling or playing and saying and finding joy in watching that child be so innocent, because we really are. We're not from the point of view of the world, but from the spiritual point of view, we are. As far as pain and sorrow, that's a little more difficult because source is pure love, absolute 100% pure love, and it doesn't recognize sorrow and hardship. It knows that we have sorrow. That's not the point. It also knows that we have the ability to take ourselves out of that sorrow. So it's like a man-made kind of thing. And also, when we have done something really bad, like for example, you know, we're a really horrible kind of person and we harm others, kill them or whatever, we are still 100% accepted. It doesn't matter. It's like it's wiped completely away, and we are part of the source immediately.
Let's say someone you know and love, a young person like under 20, came to you and said, well, first of all, let me sort of paint out a little picture of this person. This person is always loving, giving, generous, and joyful, happy, everything, all the positives, okay? This young person is like a saint, and you know this person, you know that it's real, it's genuine, and there's no dark side that's being hidden to the public life. This is just who this person is. And this person comes to you with a smile on their face and says, I'm going to go to the source. And you say, what do you mean? And basically, the basic idea is they're going to kill themselves because that's the ultimate happiness. So, you know, you could organize a party and everyone's happy, and then the person slits their wrists or whatever and goes off to the source, and everyone just as a drink and toast the memory of this person. I mean, we could just turn it into a very joyful occasion from your perspective. From my Catholic perspective, suicide is evil. It's intrinsically evil. It's always evil, and we must avoid it. And we have to suffer through this life and all that life brings us. But from your perspective, this happy-go-lucky, joyful person proposing suicide, and everyone's prepared for it. No one's surprised by it, and everyone is in complete agreement with it, because it is the ultimate path to happiness, is to go back to the source. It sort of presents you with a situation where you'd have to admit, from your perspective, that it's okay to kill yourself, and it's something that we should celebrate. And not only that, but we should all follow this person's example. No?
No. But I do understand where you're coming from. Suicide is probably the one thing that we do not have an opportunity to choose. And people who have committed suicide are told very clearly that this is not a decision you can make.
Okay.
And if the body that they have left is still functioning, now I'm going to qualify it, because there are circumstances where this might not happen. But I would say 99% of the time, when a person commits suicide, if their body that they've left behind can still hold life and continue on, then they are sent back. And they have to deal with the injuries that they've given to themselves. They, because they come here for a purpose. We all come here with something, a chore or a goal or something that we have to do. And that's written in blood. That's a contract, and we can't get out of it. And if we committed suicide, we need to go back and finish that. Now, and the other thing is that we also have a part in saying the life that we're going to be living before we come into this life. And so we need to go back and finish the goal. But the other thing is that if the person's body is too destroyed, we jumped off a bridge or hung themselves or something like that, shot themselves, and they can't live, so the body cannot sustain life anymore, then that person has two options. Number one option is they can stay at the spirit level and go over and over and over, and they have to physically actually relive it, by the way, the life that they've just left, and come to a decision of how they could have worked that out without committing suicide. Or they can go into the next life, into reincarnation, and go to the next life, and it will have all of the exact same elements that the life that they tried to get away from, and it will have all of those, and they just have to do it all over again. So you don't get out of what it is that you're trying to escape from at all.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds very, very much like Hinduism. It's what about the neutral case where someone just says, "Oh, I'm not gonna be good. I'm not gonna be evil. I'm just gonna sort of watch TV and eat snacks." It's sort of like, that would be evil from a Catholic perspective, but from your perspective, it might be sort of a neutral position. Like, I'm not going to be really good, really bad. I'm just going to chill, take care of myself. What do you have to say about that sort of neutral stance?
I think that's probably most of us. I think, yeah, I do. I think most people get up, go to work, come home, do their thing, pay their bills as much as they can, get into debt, have anger, have joys. We're just people. Yeah. And so I think that is very average.
Okay. What about the saints? I have Catholic saints. Do you have saints in your type of monistic worldview? Are there like Hindu saints or Buddhist saints or UU saints? Who are the heroes of your point of view?
I don't have a hero. No, okay. I don't. There is no Jesus or no Buddha or no Muhammad or whatever, it just isn't there. My only thing is the source. That's my I guess deity.
Okay. There's no one that believes what you believe in the history books that believed what you believe now and who lived even better than you're living your philosophy. They lived it even better than you did, and they're an example that you could strive to live up to. There's no one in the history books that believed what you believed and lived it better than you're currently living it.
Okay, there's people I look up to. There are many. Mother Teresa, I think, is fabulous. Albert Schweitzer, and there are wonderful, and the Indian guy, I can't remember, Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah, so I have people that are human beings that I very much look up to, but I don't see them as being anything more than human beings that are making better choices than some of the rest of us.
Yeah. That's what I meant. The saints are just human beings. They're sinners just like you and I from my Catholic perspective, but they're examples of how to live and how to sacrifice and how to love and how to die. So speaking of death, I guess it's the end of our interview here, but before I let you go, I want you to sort of have a chance to say anything that you wanted to get in on this particular interview. Maybe there were topics we didn't cover, or maybe you want to promote your book or direct people to a website, or is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, I would say, first of all, that the main focus of my book is to teach each one of us how magnificent we really are. We are so down on ourselves in life and stress and problems, and we really are very, very beautiful. And that's what I want to teach people, how beautiful we are. And you can find me just about anywhere. Just Google my name and you'll find me. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and I'm also answer questions when I have time on Quora, but I don't do that too much these days because I'm busy with doing my book. So that, I guess, is it in a nutshell.
Okay.
And the name of my book is The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for putting up with my Catholic perspective. I know it's different from your own, but I love and respect you for who you are, and I agree with much of what you teach and what you believe. So there's no antagonism from me. There's only love. Okay.
Okay. All right. And thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you.
My pleasure. Hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Okay. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye.